of love is love. Maybe you can even speak to that somewhat hollow claim right now. How do you answer and explain the truth to someone who's asserting that love is love, and by somehow disagreeing with that, we're enemies of love?
Sure. So, what they're saying by love is they're saying two men can love each other just as much as a man and woman can love each other. Or two women can love each other just as much as a heterosexual couple can love each other. And to that I say, you bet. You're totally right. I completely agree. Gay couples have the same capacity to love and commit that heterosexual couples have. And that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
The public purpose of marriage is not to investigate how deeply you love and care about somebody else. The public purpose of marriage is to connect men and women together when they're making babies, because those babies are going to fare best if they're raised by both that man and woman that created them. When one of them is gone, primarily the father, then the child suffers, and as a result, society suffers. So the public purpose of marriage has to do with, really, at bottom, incentivizing men to commit to the women they're making babies with, so that those babies' rights and well-being are protected. Now, heterosexual couples, there's no dispute, right, that two men can have the same amount of love and commitment as a man and a woman. That's not the issue here, right? And if government's interest in marriage was adult feelings, then gay marriage would be totally okay. Government's interest in marriage is incentivizing mothers and fathers to commit to each other so children can grow up with both. Because when they don't, then we face all the major social ills that we're tackling today in America, like massive incarceration rates,
yes,
and cyclical poverty, and rampant suicide and homelessness. All of those major social ills can go back to one factor, and that's fatherlessness. Many sociologists have posited that fatherlessness is the greatest crisis facing America today.
So true.
We have gone from a rate of about 5% out of wedlock births in the 60s to close to 40% today. And when you are talking about minority communities, you're getting up into the 70% range.
Yeah,
you
and more.
African-American children here in the United States, and about 13% of African-American children will make it to their high school graduation having only lived with their married mother and father. So what we're doing is we are starving our children of these fundamental needs that they have of mother, father, and stability. That's all that marriage is. It's combining those three staples of a child's social, emotional diet, and really giving a gift to kids so that the deck is stacked in their favor when it comes to things like school success and abstaining from substance abuse and avoiding risky behaviors. So, marriage is so not about how adults feel about each other, right? The public purpose of marriage, what government should be interested in, is how do we ensure that every child is raised by their mother and father? And historically, the answer to that question has been marriage.
Yeah, good. So what you're saying is that love is not necessarily wrong in its own essence of truth, but rather it's just not the question that we're discussing. We're not talking about the emotional validation of any type of de facto relationship that's currently permissible under law. Unlike America, Australia has actually passed dozens of laws. Actually, 85 laws were changed in 2008 to guarantee homosexual de factos equal rights in law as heterosexual de factos. There is no missing equality for the individuals in law, but the interest of society is in protecting the future taxpayers, the citizens, the body of voters that we need to keep Australia growing and keep our country growing. But homosexual relationships and other relationship types, all being equal as individuals, do not meet the unique definition of the society's interest and therefore the government's interest in regulating marriage as a unique institution.
So that's the question you need to ask is, what is the government's interest in marriage? What is the public's interest in marriage? If it's just about how two people feel each other, then yeah, make it whatever you want. 3 people, 4 people.
That's right.
Whatever, 1 person, that's fine, right? Because I have no interest in investigating the depth of your feelings for somebody else. I have a massive interest in ensuring that every child is in relationship with their mother and father whenever possible, because it's an injustice to deny the child that relationship needlessly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so we don't want to normalize mother and fatherlessness because, and that's what it does, right? When you make husbands and wives optional, you necessarily make mothers and fathers optional.
Yes.
When you redefine marriage, you redefine parenthood. How do I know? Because since the United States redefined marriage by judicial fiat 2 years ago, there is no longer any government or political institution that recognizes that children should be raised by their mother and father. To make that statement is now discriminatory.
Wow.
So do you understand that there is this massive connection between marriage policy and children's rights?
Yes.
And for all the people that say, well, marriage isn't about children, then I say, well, then what is? What is?
Great question.
If marriage isn't about children, then nothing's about children, right? Now, that's how it worked in the United States. Now that marriage is not about children anymore, now that it's no longer connected to this aspect of child well-being, because heterosexuals' sex does something different than any other kind of relationship. Now what? Well, now nothing. Now kids don't have any kind of recognized right to their mother and father. Now we have truly legally normalized mother and fatherlessness. And people, I'll tell you what, if you want to run roughshod over the next generation, right away they're, redefine their fundamental rights, right? The thing that we all, one of the most universal human longings is to be known and loved by the two people responsible for your existence.
Yep.
And in our country, at least, gay marriage has done away with the recognition that that kind of thing matters. So yeah, there's a lot at stake. And in my opinion, it's kids. Kids are at stake.
You said if you want to ride roughshod over the next generation, and that sparked for me a familiarity with the phrase we have in Australia, the stolen generation. And that's referring to a policy some decades ago, some survivors of which are still alive, which in some cases actually removed Aboriginal kids from their families for a range of different reasons, including not good ones. The base assumption that Aboriginals couldn't raise their kids properly. And we've basically called that a crime and a massive regret in Australian society, because we understand that the people that are best for the children of any generation, wherever possible, except in the cases of extreme abuse where children are actually being abused, then the children's mother and the children's father are the best people to give that child the best outcome for the future. And essentially what we're doing now, by redefining marriage and saying biological parents has nothing to do with marriage and family, we're essentially creating another stolen generation where we're saying your biological parents aren't necessarily the best people to raise you. That's not the default assumption of what's best interests of each child. And we're at a massive risk of doing that entire abuse again for the sake of some kind of legislative therapy for homosexuals.
Yeah, you're paving the way, right? I don't know exactly how this is going to connect to reproductive technologies, right? But once you normalize in law, right, that mothers and fathers are optional, then right, what you've got that comes next, so what we've seen is now using gay marriage as a grounds for insurance companies to pay for surrogacy services for gay men, right? Or couples that say, well, we want two moms to be on the birth certificate for our child, right? So now you have them using the justification of gay marriage to literally create mother and fatherless kids, right? And in this case of the birth certificates, you have judges that say, well, that's true. I mean, the law says we can't treat them differently, so we have to allow them to both be on the birth certificate, right? And so there's a problem, is they made two things similar that are dissimilar, not when it comes to adult emotion and levels of commitment, but when it comes to children and their connection and their relationship to their parents. Gay couples and heterosexual couples offer two different things. And it's pretty messy when the law equates those two things.
Thanks for watching. If you really enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a look at this great video next, and check out the website for even more interesting articles and episodes later.